Two men charged with killing her daughter and dumping her body in a creek.
You're seriously laughing right now?
A man convicted of a double murder almost 4 years ago has finally received his sentence and will be behind bars for a very long time. Jermaine Kemp was given 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole by County Judge Kevin. Family members of the victims came forward to deliver their messages before Kemp began his long prison term.
I promised myself I would not cry today. But the pain is just too hard to bear.
A jury found Kemp guilty of killing Joseph Watson and Crystal Maller on West 47th and Henry Avenue.
That day will forever play in my mind.
A third person was shot but survived. Those who couldn't be present in court shared their thoughts through videos. Joseph Watson Jr., the son of Joseph Watson, spoke about how he never had the chance for a final conversation with his father.
It was always man and boy, but it was never a man-to-man conversation. I never had a man conversation that I always wanted with.
But after the sentencing, an exciting moment was captured.
Yeah, we love you. You look good. You're watching the show. Yeah.
Love you, Pop.
The family left soon after and declined to give interviews. A former New Albany High School student has been sentenced to life in prison for murdering his mother. Even before 20-year-old Robert Lindsay entered the courtroom, he understood the severity of his mother's death. The hearing then became an opportunity for others to share their thoughts.
A murder in every sense of the word.
First, the heartache came from his aunts.
The knife that you used to slaughter her continues to pierce our family. The pain never ends.
And then came a scolding from the judge.
The night that your mother was killed, you said you went back upstairs. You didn't hear her moaning, you didn't hear her groaning, you didn't hear anything because she was already dead and you knew it.
A jury found Lindsay guilty of murdering his mother, 41-year-old LaTanya Banner, who was repeatedly stabbed following an argument about a cell phone. Under Ohio law, a life sentence was mandatory. Lindsay claimed he acted in self-defense, but apologized to his family during the hearing.
I didn't do it because I wanted to, because I wanted to inflict a death. I didn't try to kill her. It was a total accident.
The judge described Lindsay's testimony as a brilliant performance.
This court saw the greatest acting I have ever witnessed since I've been a judge. You're professional. You're a professional actor.
Lindsay left with the expected outcome, but could return for a different result. Robert Lindsay will be eligible for parole in 15 years and will appeal the verdict. A mother in pain and a family torn apart faced a man who learned his punishment for shooting his brother 16 times. Emotions overflowed outside the courtroom as the families clashed. A fight erupted after the sentencing of Rodney Curley, who was convicted of killing his brother. Both families screamed at each other in the hallway just outside the courtroom. The victim's father was distraught because he wasn't present when the sentence was handed down. The family is furious, seeking justice for their loved one. They never had the chance to tell the judge how the death has affected them.
My son had a father, and I'm here, and I was present. He's dead. He's not here.
20-year-old Rodney Curley was convicted of the murder of his half-brother, Toomer. Toomer's family reported a mix-up with the sentencing. After learning about the issue, the judge returned the family to the courtroom and apologized for the confusion.
I never told anybody anywhere to tell anybody they couldn't come in. This is a public courtroom. You're all allowed in.
Rodney Curley was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, along with other charges. The prosecutor revealed that Curley shot his brother 16 times while he was trying to run away.
Tymeer made a statement to his brother, Mr. Curley, "You're not anything without your gun." And Rodney's response was, "I don't fight, I kill. I kill."
Tumir's mother was in tears as she took the stand, describing how she lost both of her sons that day.
I know he did what he did, and he ruined my life. And he took Tymeer's life and he ruined his own life.
Rodney Curley was sentenced to 23 years in prison. Tumir's mother agreed to a lesser sentence as part of the plea deal. Everyone involved, including the victim's family, should be informed about the plea deal. However, Tumir's father said he was unaware of the agreement.
She should have never been able to sign off on something when she was the main person the reason why my son is dead.
The victim's father handed the judge a letter expressing his regret that he was not present in court. He wondered if his presence or the letter could have made a difference in the proceedings. Now, to a troubling new video from a courtroom in Florida, where a judge appears to criticize a domestic violence victim after she failed to appear in court and testify against her alleged abuser. This Florida judge is facing criticism for allegedly re-victimizing a survivor of domestic abuse.
My anxiety is like, this is every day for me.
You think you're gonna have anxiety now? You haven't even seen anxiety.
Tense exchanges occurred during a contempt of court hearing involving a woman who failed to appear to testify against her husband, who had a prior domestic battery conviction.
I'm like homeless now. I'm living at my parents' house. I'm not in a good place right now.
Her husband was accused of strangling her at knife point while she held their child. He pleaded no contest to simple battery and served 16 days in jail. She claims she informed the state that she wanted to drop the charges and move on with her life.
I hereby find you in contempt of court. I sentence you to 3 days in the county jail.
Judge, I'll do anything. Please, I'm trying to take care of him by myself. I'm begging you, please.
I've already issued my order.
A local advocate for domestic abuse victims approached the judge afterward, suggesting that she should have sentenced the woman to community service at a shelter rather than jail time. On July 18, 23-year-old Deshaun Madden was transferred to the LG Correctional Facility in Munising Township. Madden was placed in a cell with 23-year-old Rodriguez Burks. 2 days later, on July 20th, Burks was found dead. Before Burks' death, approximately 2 hours before, Madden had requested a transfer to another cell from prison counselor Karen Pernick.
He did ask me if he could move that day. He told me that I'm walking with a homosexual. I'm not into that. I don't like it. I have to move.
Just before 2 p.m., the prison clothes Burks had requested were never picked up. Corrections officer Lois Eisenman found it odd that Burks hadn't collected his package. Upon noticing this, Eisenman decided to investigate.
Proceeded to go down to the cell. I noticed there was a bundle of blankets on the bottom bunk. And I asked him, I said, "What'd you do?" He said, "I told you guys to move me." I then told him to turn around and put his hands behind his back.
I grabbed his arm, checked for a pulse. He was sweaty, real slippery sweaty. I just looked at Officer Eisman, I said, "He's dead."
Officers found Burks unconscious, wrapped in sheets and blankets. He was pronounced dead later that day. Madden was taken to an isolation room where he was read his Miranda rights. After Madden requested a lawyer, the Michigan State Police did not interrogate him. Before leaving, Madden did comment on them about living with Burks.
He wanted to get out of the cell and was concerned about rumors and things getting around, and then said something to the effect of, touched my TV, and that was the end of it.
An autopsy later revealed that Burks died from blunt force trauma to the head. Madden, who is charged with first-degree murder, has been bound over to circuit court. He is scheduled to return to court on October 4th for a pre-trial conference. Convicted killer Tabron Honey made a last-ditch plea to the State Board of Pardons and Parole today, asking them to spare his life. With only days left before Honey's scheduled execution on August 8th, the board heard arguments from his attorney about why he should be spared. Meanwhile, the family of the murdered woman argued that he deserved to die. In his final plea for mercy, Honey appeared before the board inside the state prison, where his attorneys presented their case.
Mr. Honey is here today asking for your mercy and your grace.
Honey's attorneys are asking the board to sentence him to life without parole instead of execution. Honey was convicted of brutally murdering his ex-girlfriend's mother in front of her grandchildren in 1998. While he does not deny the crime, his attorneys argue that he was so blackout drunk at the time that he doesn't remember committing it.
He began drinking that day at 8 a.m. He had consumed 2 18-packs of beer with a friend. He smoked marijuana. He drank hard liquor over the course of the day. He used methamphetamine and later drank more beer and hard liquor.
Some family members of Claudia Ben, the woman Honey murdered, also spoke at the hearing and disproved Honey's claim of blackout intoxication. The board requested that the media not show their faces.
Give that excuse that you didn't know what you did, because you know, in your mind, you know what you were doing.
The family also described the deep pain and suffering Honey's actions have caused them.
Say forgive and forget. I don't know if I can forgive this man for killing my aunt.
Tabram, you robbed us. totally robbed us. And I've waited for this day to come for the last 26 years.
In the state's closing arguments, they asserted that nothing has changed since Honey was sentenced for the heinous killing.
Honey presents nothing materially new to this board to warrant commutation. Nothing to warrant disturbing the sentencing judge's weighing of the aggravating and mitigating factors.
In their final arguments, Honey's attorneys contended that what has changed is his accountability. They argued that he is not the same man he was 26 years ago and should have the chance to be part of his daughter's and granddaughter's lives. The board listened to these arguments and testimony from Honey's family the day before. They will deliberate and take his plea into careful consideration, with a written decision expected in the next week or two before his scheduled execution. A teen facing charges in a deadly crime spree was in court, and his behavior was no laughing matter. As he started snickering, the judge sharply reprimanded him. The victim's sister believes this outburst shows the suspect's lack of remorse. He is one of 2 teenagers involved, but investigators say he faces the more severe charges as he is accused of driving the car during the wreck.
You're seriously laughing right now?
Judge Stacy was taken aback when a suspect started laughing during his court hearing. His attorney argued that his behavior reflects his youth and immaturity.
We are dealing with a 15-year-old. Unfortunately, that's part of the reason why I want the state to have more of a snapshot of him, because he is very immature.
But the judge is not tolerating it.
Take him out, please. I can't have him in here. Take him out.
What he is accused of is no joke. Investigators say he and a boy broke into a Fort Lauderdale home on August 28th, stole a car, and led police on a deadly chase that resulted in the death of 35-year-old Maria Tellez, a mother of 3.
That my niece will they will graduate from high school, not having the mother role in there, getting married maybe in the future, their first career, not having my sister there.
Maria's sister, Emila Faria, spoke to us about the suspect's laughing behavior.
It's just totally disrespectful to the judge, the courtroom, and his own family. And knowing that he doesn't care for no one's life. He already took someone's life. Doesn't care about it.
The teen's attorney requested additional testing, including a psychological evaluation and IQ test, to determine whether he would be tried in juvenile court or as an adult. Another hearing is scheduled in 3 weeks. Fort Lauderdale police have charged him with grand theft auto, aggravated fleeing and escaping causing severe injury or death, and resisting an officer, charges that are felonies. He faces misdemeanor charges. The hearing for 3 teenagers accused in a wild chase through Broward County was tense. 6 juveniles were escorted out in handcuffs for their disruptive behavior, which included kicking and cursing in the courtroom. The case involves a stolen car leading police on a high-speed pursuit through Broward County. The suspects bailed out of the car, hopped into another vehicle, and then bailed out again in Lauderhill. Deputies chased them through backyards and over fences, eventually capturing 2 of the teens. These teens faced a judge on grand theft and burglary charges. A third teen was arrested overnight after his mother saw a news video and turned him in. He has been ordered to remain in a secure juvenile detention center.
There you go.
The news didn't sit well with the teen, who started kicking and cursing. His friends in the courtroom also joined in, creating a chaotic outburst. The sheriff's office deputies cleared the courtroom to manage the unruly, foul-mouthed crowd. 6 individuals were handcuffed for their disruptive behavior, which halted the court proceedings. All 6 are juveniles themselves. A parent stepped in to try to calm down the kids. Of the 6 cuffed, 2 were held in direct contempt of court, while the other 4 were allowed to leave, but barred from returning to the courtroom for the rest of the day. The court will monitor the 3 individuals who led police on the wild chase under secure detention for at least the next 21 days. 2 Venezuelan nationals, Franklin Pina and Johan Martinez R., are charged with murdering a girl and dumping her body in a North Houston bayou. Police filed a search warrant to gather more information about one of the suspect's cell phone records. The warrant provides additional insights into the events leading up to Jocelyn's death, though some details are graphic. The 13-page document describes conflicting statements from Pina and Martinez during their interviews with Houston police following their arrest. According to the documents, the 2 men had spent spent hours at an Ojos Locos sports cantina in North Houston before meeting Jocelyn on Rankin Road. They allegedly asked her for directions and left together. He later described how Martinez, whom he referred to as Angel, killed Jocelyn. Pina claimed he told Martinez to stop, but Martinez responded, "I have to finish what I started." Martinez allegedly strangled Jocelyn. Martinez's account differed significantly. He initially distanced himself from the murder, blaming Pina entirely. Later, he admitted to tying Jocelyn's hands and feet, but claimed he told Pina to dispose of her body in the bayou to eliminate DNA evidence. The search warrant also notes that both suspects had injuries on their arms when arrested, which might indicate a struggle with Jocelyn. Police are investigating whether any significant information was found in the cell phone records.
Police actually filed this search warrant in an effort to get more information about one of these suspects' cell phone records, but there was additional information that may give us a better understanding of what happened the night Dylann Roof was killed. We have to warn you, some of the details here are graphic. This 13-page search warrant describes the contrasting interviews that Franklin Pena and Johan Martinez Rangel had with Houston police in the hours following their arrest on June 20th. Just a few days earlier, on June 16th, the two men charged in the killing of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungaray spent hours at an Ojos Locos sports cantina in North Houston before they met Jocelyn at the 7-Eleven on Rankin Road, according to police. According to the court documents, they asked her for directions, and the three of them left together. When speaking to detectives after his arrest, Pena said that he kissed Jocelyn on the lips after they walked away from that 7-Eleven. But in that same interview, he denied touching her and describes how his co-defendant allegedly killed Jocelyn. He stated that Martinez Rangel wrapped his arms around Jocelyn's neck and guided her underneath this bridge on Rankin, where he took off her pants and climbed on top of her. The search warrant states that Pena told him to stop, but he replied, quote, "I have to finish what I started." He told police Martinez Rangel later strangled Jocelyn to death and then tied up her hands and feet. That interview, starkly different from that of the second suspect. According to the warrant, Martinez Rangel initially distanced himself from the murder and claimed that Pena was solely responsible. He later told police that he did tie up Jocelyn's hands and feet, but he said he told Pena to throw her body into the bayou because he thought it would get rid of DNA evidence. Now, the search warrant also claims that both suspects had injuries on their arms when arrested. We don't know if that's because Jocelyn was fighting back. As I mentioned before, this search warrant was filed to obtain cell phone records. We are following up with Houston police to see if they found anything.
The parents of 3 teenage girls killed in a high-speed crash spoke during the sentencing hearing for the man who was driving the car that night.
I ain't mean nobody any harm. It was an accident. I ain't set out to do this. Once again, I want to apologize to the families. Face y'all this time. That's somebody that face y'all. I want y'all to know this was not on purpose. Alexandria was a good friend of mine. The other girls I didn't know that well, but I will put them in harm's way intentionally.
This is my daughter's obituary. Do you know how hard it is for a mother to write her child's obituary?
I guess as far as sentencing, they did what they saw fit to be done. It's no number of years that can replace our children. So we just wanted to get to this day, get through this day, and we've done that. And I'm pretty sure he has to deal with this 20 years plus. He's probably already did 20 years in his mind. And it's just going to be an ongoing event for us, but we did find some sort of closure here today.
Blake Scanlon was at the center of the case. On January 12, 2019, at the Westfield apartment in Massachusetts, Blake Scanlon ended the life of his girlfriend, Alexis Avery, by stabbing her 28 times with a kitchen knife. After quickly establishing a link between him and the horrifying act, the police filed charges against him. During the court proceedings, the prosecution presented detailed information about the suspect's horrific actions. Ultimately, the prosecution revealed Blake Scanlon's true nature to the court.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It was over. I'm going to ask you to keep that phrase in mind throughout the course of this trial. It was over. On January 1st of 2019, New Year's Day, Alexis Avery told the defendant, Mr. Scanlon, that their relationship was over. They had dated off and on again for several years and tried to make it work. In June of 2018, they got an apartment together at 92 White Street in the city of Westfield, and they moved in. Alexis was pregnant at the time with the defendant's baby, and in August of 2018, a baby girl, Darla, was born. Still, things weren't working out between the two of them. And on New Year's Day, Alexis told the defendant that their relationship had come to an end. On Friday, January 11th, 2019, so just about 10 or 11 so days later, Alexis made plans that night to go out with her close friend, Caitlin Avery, who's also her cousin, and you will hear from Caitlin during the course of this trial. They were going to have a girls' night out. It had been a long time. Alexis dropped her baby off at her grandmother's house and borrowed her mother's car, Jessica's car, and you'll hear from Jessica as well. Alexis and Caitlin went back to their apartment on White Street to get ready for the night. So it's about 7 or 8 o'clock. They are doing their makeup and getting dressed and just doing normal things, getting ready for the evening. The defendant, Mr. Scanlon, was there at first, and he was, as you will hear, described by the witnesses, acting mopey and sad and saying things like, "I can't believe my family is leaving." Around 8 o'clock, the defendant went over to his friend's house. Alexis and Caitlin didn't make plans with the defendant. They didn't intend to meet up with him that night. She was looking forward to spending the night with Caitlin. Now, about the same time, Alexis actually changed her Facebook profile to single and started talking to a guy at work that she had a crush on. His name, you will hear, is Scott Burns. And Scott Burns will testify in this case as well. Scott and Alexis worked together, and that night, Alexis and Scott made plans to meet up and have a drink. About 9 p.m. Friday night, Alexis and Caitlin go to a bar in Westfield called the Maple Leaf Cafe, and things are going fine. Scott, the guy she was interested in, and one of his co-workers showed up about an hour or so after Alexis got there, and they were hitting it off. Alexis and Scott were flirting and talking to each other. He was buying them drinks. But you'll hear from Alexis's cousin, Caitlin, that she kept checking her cell phone and was vigilant to see where the defendant physically was, because they shared their location together. And what you will hear is that the defendant was at his friend's house, which is what she anticipated. So at that point, all things were going fine. Now, a little bit later in the night, Alexis and Scott really started to hit it off, and they were at the bar at the Maple Leaf kissing. Sometime around then, the defendant shows up at the Maple Leaf with a friend. Caitlin went over to Alexis immediately and said, "Hey, cool it. Blake just got here." They decided they wanted to go someplace else. So they paid their tabs and they went over to another bar in town. This is probably around 11 or 11:30 now, called Whip City Brewery, or the Whip. So they paid their tabs, they went over to the Whip. They told Scott and his friend where they were going so they could meet up with them. And as they began to walk outside, the defendant rushed after Alexis, and there was a conversation that Caitlin couldn't hear, but again, things seemed fine. Around 11:30 at night, Alexis and Caitlin drove over to the second bar, the Whip, and Scott and his friend showed up shortly thereafter, as was planned. 30 minutes or so after that, the defendant once again showed up at the Whip. And this time he was alone. His friend wasn't there. Caitlin Avery will describe the defendant to you, standing in the corner alone, staring at Alexis and Scott, who are still flirting. And I expect you'll see some pictures of the inside of these two bars. They're not big. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but you'll hear from a Westfield detective who is familiar with both places, obviously, who took some pictures. These are small venues, so it's fair to say that the defendant saw what was happening with Alexis and Scott. At some point in the night, Caitlin Avery actually grabbed the defendant, Blake, who she obviously knew, and brought him outside and said something to him like, "What are you doing? You know you're breaking up." And then the defendant said something like, "How could she do this to me? And why the is that dude hugging her?" Caitlin goes, "Listen, they're co-workers, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal." But again, they're breaking up, so it shouldn't have been. The defendant says, "If I see that shit again, I'm gonna him up." Caitlin goes back inside, finds Alexis, kind of gives her the lowdown. "Hey, maybe you want to cool it a little bit with Scott." At some point in the night, Alexis, who you'll hear drove her mother's car to the bar that night, misplaced her key fob. And so she was trying to find her key fob. Caitlin was trying to help her find her key fob. Even the defendant at some point was trying to help her find this key fob for Jessica's mother's car, a Mazda. Now, 1 o'clock in the morning, Alexis kind of disappears from the bar. The defendant was still there. Caitlin was still there. The defendant was asking Caitlin, "Where is she? Where is she? I can't find her." And as it got later and closer to closing time, Caitlin became more paranoid because Alexis was her ride home and she couldn't find her. Alexis and Scott had gone out into the parking. They got into the back of his truck and they were having sex, Alexis and Scott Burns. The defendant walked up to Scott Burns' truck, saw what was happening, opened the door, and according to what I expect you'll hear from Scott Burns, in an oddly calm demeanor for what he is seeing, he simply says to Alexis, "Get your things, let's go." But not before she tells Blake Scanlon, "I don't want to be with you. I want to be with him, Scott." The defendant barely acknowledged Scott. He certainly did not him up as he claimed. He simply asked Alexis to get her things. They got into her car and they drove home to their apartment on White Street in Westfield. Caitlin did get home that night, but she never saw Alexis Avery alive. Nobody did. Because that night, Blake Scanlon, he waited until they were alone, back at their apartment. Then he got a kitchen knife and he stabbed Alexis Avery 28 times. He stabbed her in the neck, piercing her jugular. He stabbed her over and over again during her midsection. Some of those wounds were so deep that they lacerated and damaged many of her major organs. He slashed her face. He stabbed her in the back. And Alexis had what the medical examiner will describe as defensive wounds, wounds all up and down her arms. The medical examiner will tell you that there was actually literally no blood left in Alexis Avery's heart. She died out on the kitchen floor of their apartment.
Good morning. After what you just heard, I think perhaps you might be relieved about what I'm about to say next. The question in this trial won't be if you find Mr. Scanlon guilty. It will be what you find him guilty of. We start there. You heard a lot from the judge already about the presumption of innocence and how the Commonwealth must prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So you might be asking yourself, how do I square what I just said to you with that? And this is what I mean when I say the question here isn't if, but of what. I mean this: the indictment alleges murder, but you will learn that this trial, and when we put folks on trial for a crime like this, that it's not just as simple as innocent or guilty, convict or acquit. You'll be told what the law is in this Commonwealth and what it means when we talk about first-degree murder and second-degree murder and other forms of homicide. And so, if you experienced any relief at all when I did suggest to you how I expect this case to end, I would also say that in some ways, what you're being asked to do is among the hardest things we ever ask a jury to do, which is to think very carefully and listen very carefully to all of the evidence and not just focus on the outcome, but all of the circumstances surrounding that. So ADA Green has suggested here that this is all very straightforward. But I would suggest, and I will tell you that I expect that the evidence is not going to show you that was simply that it was over. The evidence is going to show that Miss Avery and Mr. Scanlon, in fact, had a lengthy on-again, off-again relationship. And that at the time that this happened, they had been on again for quite a long time, since their daughter was born in August and since before that, through her pregnancy. And that on January 11th, yes, you are going to hear evidence that they were contemplating the end of the relationship, but they still had a home together. They still lived together. They were still parenting together. I'm looking at a group of folks who surely with their life experience can appreciate that the evidence is going to show that as young people who had been together a long time and as brand new parents, the evidence is going to show had both hoped and had every expectation of parenting that child together, that even if they weren't together, that as long as they were still living in the same home and until they were not, that they were still operating with this certain kind of relationship. Now here's what's not in dispute. Ms. Avery hooked up that night with a coworker, a man that she had not been out with previously. She wasn't carrying on a long-term affair with this young man. That was the first night that they had been together. And it's not in dispute that when Mr. Scanlon came to the whip, they weren't just flirting, but that she was making out. Miss Avery was making out with Mr. Burns. And then, knowing full well that he was at the bar, went directly outside and had sex with Mr. Burns in his truck. Now, you're also going to be asked to think about the evidence about what happened after Mr. Scanlon discovered them in the truck. There are going to be questions that I'm asking you to pay attention to. How long did it take for them to get home? The evidence is going to show you that from the time Mr. Scanlon found Miss Avery and Mr. Burns together in the truck to the time they got home was an incredibly short period of time, minutes. And you're also going to be asked to consider how that discussion continued after they were in the truck, after they were on the ride home, and what happened in the moments after they got home. And that's all very important because, as I said before, it's not the case that we can just look at the terrible outcome here and decide that's it. It's all very straightforward. I don't have to think about this anymore. In fact, you're going to have to think about very hard questions indeed about what all of the circumstances mean. Now, I also want to make it clear that when I say that the law asks this of you, I am not suggesting that the law says that what happened here was okay and not worthy of punishment. It's that the law says that you must presume Mr. Scanlon innocent, and the Commonwealth must prove him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt before you convict him of any crime. So that brings us back to where I started, which is to say, to put what I said at the beginning of my remarks another way, and because the law says, and you must presume Blake Scanlon innocent, I will be asking you to find that the Commonwealth has not proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
My name is Sarah Avery, and I am Alexis Avery's stepmother. I first met Alexis when she was 10, and one of the first memories that I have of her is taking her out for her 11th birthday to Friendly's, where she got the Monster Mash Sundae and talked about that for the next 10 years. Whenever she came to our house, we always got Chinese food. We always ended with something with peanut butter. We've tried to make desserts with peanut butter. Sometimes we failed. Sometimes it was fantastic. She was a beautiful soul, and we had a lot in common. When she would come over, we would watch America's Next Top Model, Ghost Adventures, we'd bake, make crafts, and we also shared a love for Hello Kitty, which is now memorialized on my body forever. When she was taken from us, my husband, Alexis's father, Chris, has had an unbelievably difficult time. So much so that you have not seen him here at all during this trial, because he could not bear to see what was done to his daughter. He has forever been changed. Today, he is not the man that he was in December of 2018. He's a shell of the person that he used to be. He's withdrawn. He's unhappy, miserable, in fact, depressed. And I'm honestly scared for the day that he just quits, because he has not been able to move on. Alexis always said that if I ever got pregnant, that she hoped that she would have a baby brother. Unfortunately for her, that did happen after her death. Her brother was born 15 months after she died. He will never know what an amazing woman that she was, hear her infectious laugh, experience her beautiful smile, or know that they have the same almond eyes, even the same eye color. What is difficult is that we talk a lot about Alexis, and her brother just doesn't understand why he has never met her, why he can never meet her. Or really, he's only for who she is in his life. We tell him that is his sister, but it just does not comprehend. In fact, he thinks Darla, Alexis's daughter, is his sister. Actually, his best friend. Darla is his best friend. But Alexis will never, ever be able to enjoy that baby brother that she always wanted. She always wanted that baby brother. As for myself, I have PTSD from the day I had to tell Alexis's father that his daughter was murdered. I can still hear the guttural sound that he made after I said those words. Having to wait 5 years to receive justice has been horrible, and having to listen to and see the images of what was brutally done to Alexis will never, ever be forgotten. I miss the talks that we had as she grew into a woman and a mother, and how our relationship would have changed after she had Darla and I had her brother Finley. I can't help but wonder who she would have become and what her life would have been like today, 5 years later, and how proud she would be of the amazing girl Darla has become, and how similar she and her brother are in all the things she could have experienced. I can only hope that we can try to heal and remember the good memories instead of the constant reminder of what happened to her.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Daniel Bray. I'm Alexis Avery's stepfather. I'd first like to start by thanking the court, the jury, the DA's office, the law enforcement, and the witnesses in this case. 5 years ago, our lives were changed forever. My wife and I were to become grandparents to a healthy, beautiful little girl. We look forward to being loving, supporting grandparents to her and helping Alexis in any way we could, taking Darla for sleepovers, spending holidays together, taking family camping trips, and spoiling her only as grandparents can. But as we know, that great honor wasn't afforded to us. In that early morning hours of January 12th, 2019, I lost my stepdaughter, Alexis Avery. I was no longer going to be a granddad. I had a new purpose, and that was to make sure that that little girl, who was only 5 months old, and who would grow up without knowing her birth parents, wanted for nothing: love, protection, unwavering support, the kind only a parent can give. That was my new purpose. Jessica and I adopted Darla, Iris Avery Bray. Instead of a grandpa, I'm now Papa, her dad. It's been such an amazing time watching her grow and learn. I can't wait to see the amazing things she will accomplish in her life. And to close, once again, I would just like to thank the jury for paying close attention to the facts of this case. And I thank you, Your Honor, for your wisdom. Thank you to the entire DA office, the victim witness advocates that were there for us over these last 5 years, the Westfield PD, the state police, and the brave witnesses that came forward in this case to serve justice. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with the letter from Alexis's sister. Your Honor, my name is Xander, and Alexis was my older sister. I had just turned 11 on January 11th, 2019. The last time I saw her, she wished me a happy birthday, and she told me she would see me Sunday for my birthday dinner. I wish I could look Blake in the eye and say, "Hey, big bro, do you remember me?" When Alexis wasn't around, we would play Roblox, sometimes other games. When Alexis was around, he would still make me feel included. That was the last time I was ever social in the real world. He broke me. I went insane and crazy, and that led me to being bullied in school, and almost everywhere I went, people would talk bad about me. I no longer went to school after that. I'm doing online school now. I no longer exist in the real world. I'm fully online with a TikTok account that has 129 followers. I still have nightmares. It's all Blake's fault. For a long time, I actually thought everything was my fault because I trusted him and defended him when no one else did. Now I know this is not my fault. It's his fault because he took her from us. He did bad things. He means nothing to me now. He may have broken real world me, but I will always live on by being online. And Alexis's story will always live on through repeating it to all my followers. He will spend the rest of his life behind bars, and that doesn't even seem enough. But if she can't live her life, then neither can he. She will go on through Darla, and Darla will never be exposed to a monster. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I would like to thank you, the prosecutors, the victim witness advocates, and all of the people involved in the process in this case. I am Jessica Bray, Alexis Avery's mother. For over 20 years, I had the honor and privilege of being Alexis's mother before she was so senselessly and cruelly taken from me. She is still my daughter and will always be my daughter, even though she is gone. Although I still have two wonderful daughters whom I love with all my heart, there is a pain and emptiness inside me from the death of Alexis that will haunt me every day of my life. Alexis was quite literally my savior. I had her at a young age, and at a time in my life I could have gone either way. She came along and gave me purpose, a reason I had to succeed in life, And so we became partners in crime, like my best friend going through the trials and tribulations of this life with me. We basically grew up together, and I love her with every fiber of my being. I miss her smile, her laugh, and even her little attitude. She always had the spark to light up any room, even from a young age. Her personality was all her own. All that curly hair, the freckles on her face, her little lisp, her beautiful soul. She was a loving sister, a caring friend, and she was a doting young mother. She loved Darla so much, which is why she made the decision to leave her abuser and ultimately sacrificed her life in doing so. She knew Darla deserved better. A friend once told me that God knew the pain of losing Alexis would be so unbearable that he made sure Darla would be there to help us heal. She is the one great positive in all of this. Had my daughter not met Blake, we would not have Darla, and we love Darla so much that we cannot wish that either. She is so smart and beautiful, just like her mother, a daily reminder of her in many ways. We are so thankful to have her, and we will fiercely protect her. We have her training jiu-jitsu at age 5, so that if she ever meets someone like Blake and we're not there, she will be able to defend herself fiercely. My heart breaks to think that one day Darla will know the truth, that her father so selfishly took her mother from all of us. He took away someone that should have been her best friend. We have made it a priority every day to give her all the love and attention she deserves, to put her needs and wants first, because that is what she deserves. That is what parents are supposed to do. Since Alexis was taken from me, my life has felt like the movie Groundhog's Day. Every day I wake up and for a split second, I feel the hope and inspiration that a new day could bring. And then the reality of our lives hits me, and the blood instantly drains from my face and my heart drops to my stomach as I remember that Alexis is gone. It wasn't a nightmare. It is my life, truly indeed a life sentence for me. At first I wished the death penalty were an option in Mass. I wanted Blake to know his death was coming in no uncertain terms, to have a moment where he knew he only had minutes left, and face in that moment the same fear that he made Alexis feel when he did what he did. I know now that that scenario would be too good for him, too easy. He now faces life in prison. Like Alexis, he will never have the freedom to go about life, to experience love again, to participate in family as a son, brother, nephew, and as a father himself, or to spend time with the people that truly care about him. I watched Blake's family sob as the jury's guilty verdict was read. The pain that he created by murdering Alexis is not only affecting the many people that loved and cared about Alexis, but his actions also deeply hurt the people that love and care about him. The grave difference here, Your Honor, is that Blake made choices and carried out actions that landed him in this position. Alexis did not. Blake's absence from his loved ones makes sense and has direct correlation to his actions. Alexis's absence does not. Blake Jeremiah Scanlon has given Alexis's loved ones a life sentence of relentless sadness, extreme pain, and deep feelings of fear and mistrust. The extremely ugly, brutal, and violent circumstances surrounding her, a constant nightmare of how helpless, betrayed, and scared Alexis must have been in her final minutes. He deserves the exact sentence he receives, a life sentence for a life taken. Our entire family has been shattered forever, scarred by this tragedy. My 16-year-old, who had just turned 11 at the time, was diagnosed with severe PTSD 10 months after Blake brutally murdered Alexis. She has endured so much mental anguish over the betrayal of Blake that she has been hospitalized twice since 2019. We pray that with all the therapy she's undergoing, that she can recover mentally and emotionally from this tragedy and be able to live a normal life, our new normal. I now suffer from hypervigilance that is so crippling that I find myself unable to function at times. The worst thing that can happen to a person, the horrifying death of a child, happened to me. As a result, I now fear everyone and everything. I trust no one. I will never be the same. My family will never be the same. This doesn't end here. Court TV has in some way memorialized this tragedy. Over 70,000 people heard Alexis's story. Over 70,000 people, some from the other side of the world, prayed with us for justice. Even though we did not get to tell the whole story, everyone knew that Alexis's story was that of DV victims everywhere. We are not done telling her story. We will advocate for her for the rest of our lives. We will continue to call out Blake as her abuser whenever we speak of her. Alexis will not be forgotten. Alexis will live on. Thank you, Your Honor.
The jury's responsibility is to decide the case after hearing all the arguments, and this case was no different.
Deliberating jurors remain standing. Defendant remains standing. Everyone else may be seated.
Remain quiet.
Thank you, Your Honor. Madam, foreperson, has the jury agreed upon its verdict?
Yes, we have.
Would you hand the verdict slips to the court officer, please? Thank you.
All right, you may record the verdicts.
All right, Madam Foreperson, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, hearken to your verdict as the court will record it. On indictment 19 CR 168, count 1 charging murder, you upon your oath say that the defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree by reason of extreme atrocity and cruelty. So say you, Madam Foreperson. So say you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Yes.
Has this verdict been unanimous? Count 2, charging assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. You upon your oath say that the defendant is guilty. So say you, Madam Foreperson.
Yes.
So say you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Yes.
Has this verdict been unanimous?
Yes.
Thank you. You may be seated. Sir, you may be seated.
All right, members of the jury, I want to take this one final moment publicly to thank you for your service in this case. Thank you for the careful attention you gave me, the lawyers, and the parties in this case, and for your work to deliver a verdict. I told you during the course of the trial that when the trial was over, you were free to speak to anybody you'd like about this particular case. But I want to let you know that the opposite to that is also true. You are perfectly free not to speak to anybody about this case ever again. I suggest to you, given the privacy of your jury deliberations, that you consider that when you're if you choose to discuss the case with anybody outside this courtroom, that you keep in mind the sanctity and privacy of the jury deliberations and provide that to one another to keep that private. But again, your discharge as jurors, that's entirely up to you now. You're under no sanction or order of the court.
All components of the sentencing recommendation is approved.
All right, so on count 1, Mr. Scanlon, if you'll stand, please. Count 1, sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. On count 2, sir, you're going to be sentenced to 119 months to 120 months, concurrent with count 1. All right? Is there anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Mr. Scanlon, you are to receive 1,908 days credit for time served by agreement order of the court. There is a $90 victim witness fee assessed. There is a $50 domestic violence fee assessed. You are advised you must provide a DNA sample within 1 year of today's sentence. You further advise you do have a right to appeal to the Appellate Division of Superior Court and Superior Court Rules 64 and 65. The court officer defendant bar is in your custody under sentence.
Go ahead. Take all that. Just step off. Okay, we'll take it in 3.
This Karen should have learned how to address and behave in court before appearing before the judge.
Good morning. Are you Janetta Pugh?
I'm the beneficiary of the estate.
You're the beneficiary of what estate? Answer my questions, please, ma'am.
I'm just trying to understand. What's the announcement?
Judge, it's my understanding that Ms. Pugh and her family has retained an attorney on this matter. I don't know if you remember, Judge, this is when I was originally appointed on, and we were on the trial docket. She hired a new attorney at that point. Once, recently when the case came back to me, I visited with her. I was given the name of Christopher Wiley this morning, but I have not heard from him. But I've been told that that's who's supposed to be taking over the case.
Ms. Pugh, Mr. Lewis has been appointed to represent you at this point. We want to get your case taken care of. If you've hired or your family has hired another lawyer, then they have to contact the court. And do you know if they've hired someone?
Respectfully, Your Honor, I do not agree with your appointed foreign agent, considering that the first duty is to the state.
The only thing I can do, I'm appointing an attorney to you to help you. If you don't want a court-appointed attorney, then your only option, two things. One is to represent yourself or to hire a lawyer. Listen to what I'm saying. Are you either going to represent yourself, or are you going to let Mr. Lewis represent you, or are you going to hire someone?
Objection, Your Honor. Respectfully, is this a court of record?
It is a court of record. So your objection's overruled.
Respectfully, Your Honor, where is the verified claim that is being placed against my trust?
It's right here. It's called an indictment. And Mr. Lewis has a copy of it.
There were writs that was filed to the case that still haven't been received. I demand to be released due to lack of evidence of stated claim and not being given the proper opportunity to obtain proper counsel.
So here's the thing, Ms. Pugh. I appreciate your position, but listen, Ms. Pugh, don't speak over me. Ms. Pugh, just because you say respectfully does not mean that you get to interrupt me. Everything you have there is overruled. So I'm going to leave Mr. Lewis as your attorney unless you choose to represent yourself. I'm going to give you 2 weeks to determine what you're going to do. You can go back with the bailiff. Get your own attorney or represent yourself if you don't.
The judge had the perfect response for this Karen. He exposed her lies and later demonstrated the consequences of messing with the court.
Apparently Walmart reimbursed this lady. I don't think she's out anything. What happened to the rest of the gift cards?
They're still on the gift cards, but I do not have the gift cards anymore.
You don't have them. What happened to them?
I felt guilty and it was wrong what I was doing. I moved. They're wherever they're left. I don't have them.
Well, one thing that I look for to see whether people telling me the truth or not is whether they give me a direct answer. Let me ask you again, what happened to the remaining gift cards?
I left them.
Left them where?
At my grandma's, and she moved. They're probably in the trash.
So you used an indeterminate amount of them. At which Walmart store did you use them?
I didn't use them at a Walmart store.
Where did you use them?
ATM to get money for diapers, mainly the ATM.
I would really like to know where this money was spent. And I'm also interested in how much you actually stole from it. Did you get charged with anything, any place?
Like I've been charged for this.
You pled guilty to a larceny charge and they put you on a 1-year suspended sentence. So you're not telling me the truth about having a criminal history. I don't know how much is true and how much is not true. So how would you like to do about 90 days in jail?
Please don't. I got babies.
Yes, that's unfortunate. So let's back up. Tell me about your theft charge in Elkhart County, Indiana.
Theft in Elkhart County, Indiana. I was buying groceries. They didn't take me to jail because it was COVID.
I don't believe that part of the story either.
Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.